Thank you, Wenda. I enjoyed listening to your talk. Does anyone have a question? I'm listening. Vast silence.
Hello.
Hello.
I have a question,
Yeah.
and maybe it's related to listening. But so when we are about the world and talking to people, there's things that come at us and thoughts, and I think listening is also about uh, re- um, giving up, or not giving up, but forgetting oneself, and that's very hard to do. So, and there's another word for that is renunciation. So, how do we do that? How do we renounce to things? And I think also about the Heart Sutra, and no eyes, no nose, and all of that. So these are things that sometimes I think maybe we have to give these things up. I don't know. I'm most times when I'm talk and I try to ask a question, I'm not sure what I'm asking, but what I'm what I'm asking is, do we have to give these things up?
Moment to moment. It's not giving up, it's becoming one. So you don't lose anything if you completely listen to someone else. And rather than just your own mind, the other person's mind is also available to you. So the teaching of non-duality is the same. Trust. That doesn't mean you simply trust your own mind, your own thoughts, but that your mind connects with all other minds. So whoever is before you, that person is Buddha. So if your mind completely connects with that person's mind, then you also are Buddha. This is not a matter of gaining something, but simply of realizing what you are, what the person before you is. And then two minds become one, and that one mind is open to the whole universe. Maybe that helps. Thank you for your question. Any other questions?
I have a question. At the retreat yesterday, started thinking about, after the talk, the suffering of coronavirus. And one thing that's bothered me, bothered, I don't know if that's the right word, but keeps coming up, perhaps is the better way to say it. But I began to think of it as if I were, as you said, a kangong. You think of it as a jewel, and look at it this way, and turn it and look at it a different way. So if I think of it, and so then the suffering came up as kind of a jewel, and so you hold it one way, and you see the coronavirus suffering, and so the things in place to maybe ease the suffering on that. But then you turn it another way, and some of the things done to ease the coronavirus suffering increases suffering in other ways. So, especially, of course, school is out now, but but during the school year, those students who maybe teachers were, because it happens where you're working on a case of abuse, physical, sexual abuse, and then all of a sudden it stopped. And so not everybody, I have a safe place to be, pandemic or no pandemic, it's a safe place to be, but not everybody has that. So then some of the things needed to stop the spread of coronavirus, and I'm not debating whether they should be or shouldn't be, I'm just saying that then it causes suffering in other ways. And so we don't really ever get rid of the suffering, no matter what we do. And then, domestic violence was up because of the isolation in place, or self-isolation, or whatever term that's being used for it, suicide. So you have create different suffering. And
let me ask you to pause at this point.
Sure, because I don't know where else I would go from there anyway.
So you have just realized and expressed beautifully the first noble truth of Buddhism, which is that life is dukkha. Dukkha means suffering. The part of it is actually in the same Indo-European root as the DYS words that we have in English, like dystopia and so forth. Simply means bad, not so good. Makes that into an abstract noun, suffering, unsatisfactoriness, and that this is universal. You expressed that very well just now. Sometimes even the attempt to alleviate suffering creates more. So what can we do? This practice that we do opens our minds, our heart, makes our center strong. If we really cultivate a perfectly clear mind, a perfectly open mind, a heart that is really open to suffering, not shunting it aside, but really open, and a center that is strong enough that we are not off course. This is the way to deal with suffering. If we were all perfect Zen students, there would be suffering in the world. But we would be in a better position to alleviate that suffering in ourselves. And I think by any other course of action or practice or discipline. So perceiving suffering is important. And I don't know of any perception that encourages us more to practice hard. So that's where we are in this all together, in this world of dukkha. But we're in it completely together. All of the images on the screen multiplied by 1 billion. And that's about how many human beings we have. We're all deeply interconnected, not only with other human beings, but with all other beings. Perceiving that is at least the beginning, dealing with suffering, bringing suffering to an end. So, good question. Are there any other questions?
I have a question following up on the previous question. What you just said about suffering led me to think that when I witness suffering, I inevitably experience distress, great distress. And I'm wondering if I'm falling into some sort of trap there, and if you have any thoughts or advice about how to witness suffering. I don't know, I'm thinking about the difference between taking it on, taking it in, or just being with it in a way that is not so agonizing. That's my question. What are your thoughts about this?
Yes. That's a natural, human reaction to suffering. If suffering creates a lot of distress, the root cause of that is that our center is not strong. So imagine that suffering is, just to make it concrete, is something that's buffeting you with blows physically. So just a physical analogy. So if your center is strong, you will not be thrown off by all of this being buffeted by blows. You can stand firm in the course of being buffeted by blows. So if your center is strong, then experiencing other people's suffering or your own suffering will not throw you off balance, will not throw you off course. So we always say, only go straight. Perceive the best course of action that is available to you, and then just do it. So all of this just leads to the need for more practicing, for having a really clear mind, so that you really perceive suffering and the source of suffering. Then you can better perceive what you should do. Then if your center is strong, you can actually do it. And these days, it's very easy to be blown off course, and to lose our center, to lose our direction. On the other hand, these hard days can actually strengthen our resolve to practice. So that is, in some sense, the good that can come out of it. Not that it is good in itself, but that you can use anything to strengthen your practice. It doesn't mean you simply become strong and this doesn't affect me anymore and you're isolated. No, you're all the more deeply connected with this suffering world. So if there's suffering, then become one means become one with the suffering. So that's where we all are right now. We come together in practice, and I think we all sense that coming together in practice, even if it's virtually, and we're not physically with each other, we're all deeply connected, can have that kind of connection with the whole world. And so all beings deeply are interconnected. That's the nature of the universe, the nature of reality. So realizing that deep interconnection is fundamental to dealing with suffering. You can certainly understand that if you know you're not in this alone, then it's much easier. That in a very real sense, you're supported by all beings. That's the nature of the universe. Thank you for your question. And we have time for one more question.
Is it possible to be interested in everything another person says?
Have you ever had that experience?
Well, yeah, you think some people are boring, some talks are boring, some news is boring. So, is it possible?
Do you want a yes or no answer?
I want an explanation from your point of view.
Yes, I think it is possible to be interested in anyone, no matter how boring. Beyond that boring quality, and perhaps motivating it, is some kind of suffering, some kind of lack of life, some kind of failure to thrive. So if you can perceive that, then immediately, as an ordinary human being, some kind of compassion arises. Who is this person? Why is this person the way she is? Then you're immediately interested in the person. I don't mean that you begin psychoanalyzing the person, like what's wrong with this person? And maybe she was abused as a child. And maybe she never had a proper education. Maybe she never reads anything. I don't know. Not that sort of thing. But again, to see the deep interconnection that you have with every being, no matter how boring. So if you look at a stone, yeah, we say, as lifeless as a stone, as dull as a stone. Yeah. You might think, it's just a stone. But if you look at it very closely, very carefully, and you really begin to see the stone, or as Judy said yesterday, I think it was, Judy gives so many wonderful talks, I can't keep them all straight. But you look at a sidewalk, and you're standing on the sidewalk, it's just a sidewalk. What could be duller? But if you really look at it, you see its fine granular structure. You see the light coming off it in different ways. Then that sidewalk becomes very interesting. So too with any human being, with any being at all. If you're really, really paying attention, it's all very, very interesting. So it may well be that when you find a person boring and dull, excuse me, it's not perhaps only a lack of compassion, but simply a lack of deep engagement through all your senses and your mind. I think that everything is more interesting than we first think it is. It's like the quote from Sosan that someone brought up earlier. Zen practice is like having this stone in your hand, this gemstone. You look at it this way, and you look at it that way. You roll it around. You keep looking. You keep looking. So there's a jewel like that in every person. So please perceive that jewel. So thank you very much. It's wonderful to have this connection with everyone. I'm becoming more and more grateful to the engineers behind this technology that enables this. I think it may be time for announcements now.